Well, you don't want to see my ugly mug again, do you? What's there to talk about anyway? The end of society as we know it? They're saying it's possible. But one way or another, which is something you gotta remember, is we infest this planet like ants. And one way or another, our species will survive. Even if it's in greatly reduced numbers. But like I've mentioned before, it isn't necessarily a virus or illness that people should be concerned about. It's the supply chain and the economy that's more than likely the biggest threat. And in my estimation, that's why all this is happening. Many things have happened that wouldn't have happened had their candidate been elected. And to me, it has proven time and time again that our president is not one of them, or a lot of this shit wouldn't have happened in the first place. So in a way, you can blame it on Trump. But the reality of it is where they were trying to take us. Thank God for Trump. Because along the way, they've exposed themselves and what they intend to do at every turn. They intend to limit speech and potentially abolish the First Amendment. They intend to take away our right to defend ourselves and do away with the Second Amendment. They intend to socialize everything so that there is no opportunity for real success for the public at large. In other words, and I've said this before, they intend to turn the world gray so that everything and everyone is the same and our choices are limited. That's the overall goal in all of this. And anybody who hasn't seen that by now obviously hasn't been paying attention. And anyone who calls themselves an American and isn't willing or hasn't spoke out against it in some way, shape, or form is for it happening. Suppose I can give you an example. It's fairly obvious that certain of the main social media platforms are censoring people's ideas and opinions that you may be participating in every day. And when you don't speak out against it in some way, shape, or form, or let it be known that you're not down for that kind of activity, then you promote it. And when it happens, or if it happens, you don't have anybody to blame but yourself, or we don't have anyone to blame but ourselves, because we were too meek, too tolerant, too willing to look the other way because we didn't want to lose our voices or our platform or our anything because of it. I think I've said this before, but it's worth repeating. If you're not willing to speak out against it, then whether you realize it or not, you must be for it. Hate to whoop you over the head with logic, but you might not want to admit it even. But my logic is undeniable. It's a lot like dealing with your kids. Or a bully. Because if you're not willing to say anything about it, and to the people that are trying to accomplish it, that means you condone it. And they're only going to do it more until you finally put your foot down or are willing to stand up for yourself. Common sense and fair play isn't necessarily part of the equation. And that should be pretty obvious to everybody by now. Because when and if they're able to institute their fucked up policies, they're going to claim this is what we wanted because we weren't willing to say anything. And to them, that made them think that it was okay. Nothing a lot of us haven't seen or done ourselves. When mom and dad didn't say, hey, what the hell are you doing? And set the record straight. When somebody was picking on us and we finally realized that for the most part, it was our own damn fault. Because we weren't willing to stand our ground and say, I'm not going to put up with that shit anymore. That's where we're at. And that's where we've been at for quite some time. And by keeping your head down, avoiding controversy, and not being willing to use your voice, to them, that makes them think that it's okay. And have used it and will use it to justify their actions in order to change our whole way of life. And in the end, should it be allowed to happen, the unfortunate, sad reality is we won't have anyone to blame except for ourselves. And if it isn't, that should be what the Great Awakening is all about. the ability for the human race collectively to stand up and say, hey, we're not going to put up with this shit anymore. In one way or another, unless they manage to wipe our numbers out in such a significant fashion, it's gonna happen. If not now, it'll be later. Because the reality of it is, or as history should have taught anybody who's willing to pay attention, empires are built to fall. Slaves are only taken so that they can regain their freedom later. And the iron fist of tyranny can never hold on for an indefinite period. Because the people who are under it are only willing to put up with it for so long. The sad reality is, and my disappointment in the human race, society, the world, whatever you'd like to call it, is the fact that we have been pacified so much and so deceived that we've allowed it to get this far in the first place. That more people at this point aren't willing to say, what is this bullshit? And I have no intention of taking it anymore. How dare you take liberties with our lives, our opinions, our freedoms?